Good evening and welcome to The Modern Voice. Tonight we delve into a profoundly challenging and often divisive subject. Should capital punishment, the death penalty, be eliminated as a legal sentence in our society? This is a question that touches upon our deepest understanding of justice, morality, and the role of the state. Joining us to explore this complex issue are two distinguished guests. Mr. Samuel Green, a fervent advocate for the abolition of capital punishment, will argue for its complete removal from our legal framework. And Ms. Olivia Thorne, who will present the case for retaining the death penalty, particularly for what society deems the most heinous of crimes. Our debate will proceed with opening statements from each speaker, followed by rebuttals, a moderated discussion where I will pose some specific questions, and finally, closing remarks. We aim for a thoughtful and respectful exchange of views today, maintaining clarity appropriate for a B2 level of English proficiency. Let's begin.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Good evening. I stand before you today to argue unequivocally for the abolition of capital punishment. In my view, and in the view of a growing number of jurisdictions worldwide, the death penalty is an inhumane and archaic practice, fundamentally incompatible with the values of a modern, civilized society. It is a punishment that is not only cruel, but also irreversible, and for that reason alone, it is morally indefensible. Firstly, let us consider the undeniable fallibility of our justice systems. No matter how many safeguards are in place, human judgment is prone to error. The consequence of such an error in a capital case is catastrophic: the execution of an innocent person. We have seen numerous cases where individuals sentenced to death have later been exonerated, sometimes posthumously, thanks to advancements in DNA technology or the emergence of new evidence. This irrevocable act of taking an innocent life by the state is a stain on any justice system that permits it. Can we truly accept such a risk? Secondly, the argument that the death penalty serves as a unique deterrent to crime simply does not hold up to scrutiny. Decades of research and countless studies have failed to provide conclusive empirical evidence that capital punishment deters crime more effectively than a sentence of life imprisonment. Many countries that have abolished the death penalty have not seen a corresponding rise in violent crime. In fact, some have lower rates than retentionist states. The idea of deterrence is often based more on assumption than on solid fact. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, there are profound ethical and moral objections. State-sanctioned killing, regardless of the crime committed by the individual, fundamentally violates the inherent right to life and human dignity. It is a cruel, inhuman, and degrading punishment that mirrors the very violence it seeks to condemn. We have a moral imperative to seek justice, yes, but that justice must be tempered with mercy and a commitment to upholding the sanctity of all life, not perpetuating cycles of violence. A just society should aim for rehabilitation and restorative justice where possible, not retribution that lowers us to the level of the offender. Therefore, I urge its complete elimination.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Good evening, Mr. Green. While I acknowledge the sincerity of Mr. Green's position, I must firmly disagree with the assertion that capital punishment has no place in a modern society. On the contrary, I believe it is a just, and in certain specific and extreme circumstances, a necessary sentence for the most heinous crimes imaginable. Those acts that so profoundly shock the conscience of a community. My primary argument centers on justice for the victims and their families. For those who have suffered unimaginable loss and trauma at the hands of perpetrators of horrific crimes, mass murder, terrorism, the torture and murder of a child, life imprisonment may not feel like a proportionate punishment. The death penalty, in these limited cases, can offer a measure of solace, a sense that the scales of justice have been balanced, and that the profound harm inflicted has been met with an equally profound societal response. It is a form of retribution, yes, but retribution that acknowledges the immense value of the innocent life taken. Secondly, while the debate on general deterrence is complex, capital punishment serves as an undeniable societal denouncement of extreme violence. It sends an unequivocal message that certain acts are so abhorrent, they will not be tolerated, and will be met with the ultimate sanction. Furthermore, there is the aspect of specific deterrence. For individuals already serving life sentences who commit further violent acts within prison, or for those who pose an ongoing, undeniable threat even behind bars, capital punishment can be the only effective means of preventing future harm. Finally, Mr. Green speaks of the sanctity of life. I contend that by imposing the ultimate penalty for the deliberate, malicious taking of an innocent life, society actually underscores and affirms the supreme value of that life. It is about restoring a moral equilibrium, ensuring that there are just deserts for those who commit the gravest crimes against humanity. It is about societal protection and upholding the principle that life is sacred, and those who violate that sanctity in the most egregious ways must face the most serious consequences. Therefore, when applied judiciously and with all due process, capital punishment remains a vital instrument of justice.
Ms. Thorne speaks eloquently about justice for victims, and my heart goes out to anyone who has suffered from violent crime. However, I must challenge the notion that state-sanctioned killing provides true justice or healing. Executing an offender does not bring back the victim, nor does it necessarily alleviate the profound anguish experienced by their families. In fact, for some, it can perpetuate a cycle of violence and bitterness, rather than fostering genuine closure. True justice, I believe, lies in accountability and, where possible, restorative practices that focus on healing and understanding, not in replicating the act of killing. We must ask if we are seeking vengeance or a more constructive form of justice. Regarding Ms. Thorne's point on deterrence, particularly specific deterrence, the argument still rests on a flawed assumption. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole effectively incapacitates dangerous offenders and protects society. The idea that we need the death penalty to manage prison populations or deter those already serving life sentences overlooks the fact that many abolitionist countries manage these issues effectively without resorting to capital punishment. The data remains inconclusive on its unique deterrent effect. And finally, I must re-emphasize the irreversible nature of this punishment. The inherent cruelty, the psychological toll on all involved, and the ever-present risk of executing an innocent person far outweigh any perceived benefits that Ms. Thorne has presented. A system that prioritizes retribution over the potential for error and the sanctity of all life is a system that needs fundamental reform, not the retention of such a final and brutal penalty.
Mr. Green understandably highlights the risk of error, and no one takes the prospect of executing an innocent person lightly. It is a grave concern. However, modern justice systems, particularly in jurisdictions that retain capital punishment, have implemented incredibly stringent safeguards to minimize this risk. We are talking about extensive, multi-layered appeal processes, thorough judicial reviews, and the increasing reliability of forensic evidence like DNA. While no system operated by humans can claim absolute infallibility, the focus is on reducing that risk to the lowest possible margin, reserving this sentence for cases with overwhelming, irrefutable evidence of guilt for the most atrocious acts. Mr. Green also dismisses the deterrent effect. While general deterrent statistics can be debated, the specific deterrents for hardened criminals who have already demonstrated they are beyond rehabilitation, or for those who might commit further atrocities if not faced with the ultimate penalty, cannot be so easily ignored. Consider the safety of prison staff and other inmates when dealing with individuals who have nothing left to lose. The death penalty can, in such specific contexts, be a necessary tool to prevent further loss of innocent life. And this brings me back to the concept of proportionate justice. For crimes that truly shock the conscience of society, acts of extreme brutality, mass killings, terrorism, a sentence of life imprisonment, however long, may not be perceived by society or by the victims' families as a sufficiently severe or just punishment. It is about affirming that some actions are so profoundly evil that they forfeit the right to life itself. This is not about vengeance, but about a just and measured societal response to unspeakable evil.
Dr. Hayes, the international trend is highly significant. It reflects evolving global standards of decency and a growing recognition of fundamental human rights. When a majority of democratic and developed nations conclude that capital punishment is incompatible with modern values, it signals a shift in our collective moral understanding. This isn't merely about following a trend. It's about learning from the experiences of other nations that have successfully navigated complex justice issues without resorting to state-sanctioned killing. It suggests that alternative, more humane approaches are not only possible, but also preferable for a society that values human dignity above all.
While I respect the legal traditions of other nations, Dr. Hayes, I believe that matters of criminal justice, particularly those concerning the most severe punishments, should primarily be determined by individual sovereign states, reflecting their own cultural values and societal needs. The fact that some countries have abolished it doesn't automatically render it unjust or unnecessary for all. Some crimes are so heinous, so destructive to the fabric of a society, that the ultimate penalty may be deemed appropriate by that society, regardless of international trends. National sovereignty in defining justice is paramount.
An interesting divergence of views. Let's turn to another practical aspect, the economic costs. Mr. Green, some argue that the death penalty, with its lengthy appeals process, is actually more expensive than life imprisonment. How do you respond to this, and are there alternative punishments you see as more viable?
Indeed, Dr. Hayes, that argument is well supported by evidence. The extensive legal processes, mandatory appeals, and heightened security measures associated with death penalty cases often make it significantly more costly to taxpayers than a sentence of life imprisonment without parole. These substantial resources could be far better allocated to crime prevention programs, support services for victims' families, or improving our justice system in other, more constructive ways. Life imprisonment without parole is a perfectly viable and severe alternative that ensures public safety without the moral and financial burden of capital punishment.
Mr. Green raises the issue of cost, but I firmly believe that financial considerations should not be the primary determinant when we are discussing justice for the most egregious crimes. Can we truly put a price on ensuring that a mass murderer or a serial torturer will never harm another human being again? While life imprisonment aims to incapacitate, the finality of capital punishment offers an absolute guarantee against future harm from that individual. Moreover, for the victims' families, the debate isn't about cost. It's about what constitutes a just and proportionate response to the devastation they have endured. The societal statement made by the ultimate penalty can be invaluable in that context.
In closing, I want to reiterate the core reasons why capital punishment must be abolished. Firstly, the undeniable and unacceptable risk of executing an innocent person is a moral red line we should never cross. Secondly, the overwhelming body of evidence shows it is not a more effective deterrent to violent crime than life imprisonment, making its supposed necessity questionable at best. Thirdly, and most fundamentally, it is a practice that violates basic human dignity and the sanctity of life, reducing the state to the level of the killer it condemns. It is inherently cruel and unusual. We must strive for a justice system that is rooted not in retribution, but in principles of rehabilitation where possible, restorative justice for victims, and an unwavering respect for human life in all its forms. Abolishing the death penalty is a critical step towards creating a more humane, just, and civilized society, one that truly reflects our evolving standards of decency and our highest moral aspirations. Our moral compass should guide us away from state-sanctioned killing.
To conclude, I maintain that capital punishment, when reserved for the most heinous and depraved acts, serves essential functions within our justice system. It offers a form of proportionate justice for victims who have suffered unimaginable horrors, and for their grieving families. It acts as an ultimate societal condemnation of such extreme violence, reinforcing our collective commitment to the sanctity of innocent life. Furthermore, it provides an undeniable measure of societal protection by ensuring the most dangerous offenders can never kill again. While the concerns about its application are valid and demand rigorous safeguards, which are indeed in place, these do not negate its necessity in those rare cases where the crime is so grievous that no other penalty suffices. The retention of capital punishment is not about vengeance. It is a measured response, a non-negotiable stance against those who commit the most egregious offenses, demonstrating societal resolve to protect its members and uphold justice. It is a necessary tool, used judiciously, for a safe and just community.
Mr. Green, Ms. Thorne, thank you both for your incredibly insightful, articulate, and passionate contributions to this very challenging debate this evening. You have clearly laid out the profound conflict at the heart of this issue, the deep respect for all human life and the risk of irreversible error, versus the demand for ultimate justice for victims of heinous crimes and the protection of society. There are no easy answers, and the arguments on both sides carry significant weight. We hope this discussion has provided our audience with a deeper understanding of the complexities involved. We encourage everyone to reflect further on the powerful points made today. Thank you for joining us on The Modern Voice. Good evening.